Good morning from the East Coast, or afternoon, depending on where you are. And welcome to the 6th week of our MDR Food Crossroads series. I'm so excited this week to be joined by award-winning best-selling author of 11 books, chef and TV personality, Amy Riolo. Amy is the brand ambassador for the Maryland University of Integrative Health. She also has a private label of Italian culinary products and co-leads culinary tours to Italy, Greece, and Morocco, and is so well-traveled and well-versed throughout the Mediterranean. We're so happy to be joined in our 6th episode by Amy Riolo. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much, Allison. It's great to be here. And thank you to everybody at the Mediterranean Diet Roundtable. I love your series, and I'm really a fan of what you're doing.
Yes, it's wonderful to see what the MDR is doing to just make the Mediterranean lifestyle so approachable, just like what you're doing, Amy. So to that, last week we had Mary Angela Miller, whom I know you've worked with at MDR many times. Mary Angela is an esteemed colleague of mine, also a registered dietitian with quite a bit of experience throughout the Mediterranean with the Mediterranean lifestyle as well. And one of the things that was really poignant in our conversation with Mary Angela was when she mentioned that the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle is a yes lifestyle. Heritage lifestyles in total are yes lifestyles, meaning that they don't ask us to eliminate or remove products. It's actually a very inclusive about bringing ingredients in and really celebrating them. So tell me a little bit about your perspective on that, Amy.
Well, that's what I love the most about it. You know, it doesn't ask you to exclude everything. Even if something's not good for you, you could still have a little bit of it on a holiday or on a Sunday. So you never have to feel like you're giving up. Because I know a lot of people like me, the minute you say that you can't have something, that's when you all of a sudden want it. Like maybe there's something I never want, but tell me I can't have it, I'm going to want more. So the Mediterranean lifestyle, you don't have to worry about that. Plus, it's really tasty to begin with. And there are a lot of great things that are naturally good for you. So by doing it, you don't feel like you're sacrificing or giving anything up. And that's actually how I got started. When I was young, my mom was diagnosed with diabetes, and she came home with a list from her doctor of all the foods that she couldn't have. And so after about 3 days of mourning, I was like, because I was the family cook at that time, so I was like, well, what can we have? You know, and I made a list from that. And it's been my philosophy ever since I was a teenager of just work with what you can have, make the best combinations of what you can, and you know, give yourself some treats every now and then so that you can keep going. And that's what the Mediterranean lifestyle is all about.
How wonderful is that? So it's so true. It's embracing what you can have, and it's looking with pleasure on it, right? It's really trying to find ways to suit your lifestyle in the most positive way possible. So you've been doing that for more years than we even recognize, because it sounds like through childhood you even took that approach. So how wonderful
I need credit for my youth.
How wonderful that you've built a career on that now, Amy.
Yeah.
And a very successful one. So I know you've prepared for us a few items to showcase. So tell us about what you prepared today.
I thought we'd do something a little different. I wanted to do an Eastern Mediterranean breakfast, which anyone could totally do at any time of the day for a snack, light lunch, a vegan dinner, but you know, great foods that are very nutrient dense, but also make a delicious and filling breakfast that don't get enough play, in my opinion, in the Mediterranean diet discussion. These are from my 10th book, which is The Mediterranean Lifestyle for Dummies. So I've got here some homemade labna cheese, which is a strained yogurt. You can just take good quality Greek or any European full fat yogurt, strain it overnight in a cheesecloth, and you're gonna get this wonderful spreadable cheese. I've got some olive oil on top of it and some za'atar. So this is za'atar. In Arabic, there's a saying, zayt za'atar, which means olive oil and za'atar, because these are wonderful health properties. The za'atar has wild thyme in it, which is really good, as there's a lot of good antiviral and also good for respiratory system properties, sesame seeds, coriander, a little bit of oregano, and some sea salt. So that's very good for us, and they eat it all the time. And then I've got some just chopped up cucumbers and tomatoes and fresh lemon juice, because they're part of every breakfast table in North Africa and also the eastern part of the Mediterranean. I've got some wonderful dates. I've got some almonds. And then I'm going to teach you how to make fulmadames today, which are Egyptian fava beans. So I'm going to start off by just heating some oil in my pan. And this is my private label single estate olive oil from Italy. And it's a blend of two cultivars, the Intosso and the Gentile di Chiatti. which are native to the Abruzzo region, which the founder of the Mediterranean Diet Roundtable, Daniela, is from. So I'm just going to add in my beans.
Oh, you're making me wish we were together in your kitchen right now, Amy. It's hard to be.
I wish you were here. I was there for you. Today is a holiday in Italy called l'Immacolata, which is the Immaculate Conception. So it's kind of like the kickoff of the Christmas season. And I'm going to show you what I'm doing down in this pan. So these are my fava beans. So these have been, they're dry, they're soaked, they're cooked for a very long time. But I wanted to tell everybody, if you wanted to get a can, all the Middle Eastern stores have a can of the fava beans, and they're much easier to cook. And most Egyptian households actually do this. They've had this fava bean in Egypt since ancient times. It's one of the world's most oldest agricultural crops, and it was eaten by all the ancient cultures there, the Jews, the Christians, eventually the Muslims. But it was around in pagan times as well. High source of protein and really will fill you up for the day. But of course, you can eat it later on. I'm adding some cumin, which of course helps our digestion when we're eating with beans. And Egyptians use cumin and cumin seed a lot to help with digestion. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt and some freshly ground pepper just to give it some flavor. Oops, got out of my hand.
I love that you gave us both the option for the slow cooked traditional method and also the canned bean method, because we know that not everybody has the time or thinks that far in advance about preparing. So it's nice. I appreciate that you gave us both today, Amy.
Right. So I'm going to let these simmer just for a second while I talk. It just takes like 2 minutes. It's like, this is, the fast food that you want. And Allison, it's a good point. The reason I mention that is because a lot of people forget just how quick food can be and how you have to kind of make the best of both worlds when it comes to what you're doing in the kitchen. And so people always ask me all the time, can I use frozen fish? Do I have to always be fresh? Does it have to be this? And I say, frozen fish or frozen vegetables are going to prevent you from going through a drive-through or ordering takeout that's not good for you. Then it's a really good idea to use frozen fish. But if you've got fresh fish, that's going to be the best of all worlds too. So, go ahead and use that as well.
Definitely.
And so these are simmering, and now I'm going to show you a little bit more of what we're working with. So everything starts to kind of incorporate, and then you can take a potato masher and just go through this way. And it's going to kind of have a consistency of refried beans. And the point of this is that you can scoop it up with pita bread, and I've got some just in the warmer. I hope that they're still puffed so that you can see how beautiful that looks like. But if you start out your breakfast this way, you have so many wonderful macronutrients already that it will really take you a long time. And in fact, if you ever spend time in Egypt, I spent a lot of time there. I've lived and worked there and done many different projects there. People tend to eat very late lunches. So when I first started going, I was eating breakfast, Italian style, just kind of like light, with a cappuccino, maybe some bread, and some other things. And I noticed that I was getting hungry really early and nobody else was eating that. So I very quickly adopted that to Italian. So I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice. This is just the finishing touch. You always want to have some fresh lemon juice on your food. And it's spelled F-U-U-L, medames. That's the dish, medames, or Egyptian fava beans. And even Egyptian falafel is made with this kind of bean. They're not made with chickpeas as they are in other places in the Mediterranean. So if you're going to be involved with Egyptian things at all, it's kind of a nice idea to look at this type of a recipe and get familiar with that nutritious bean as well.
Definitely. You mentioned all the macronutrients and micronutrients we know that are in legumes. So it is such a wonderful way with great staying power. And I can't even talk as I'm seeing this pita bread. That looks incredible.
Right? It's still got a little bit of pulp. You can do it right at the same time. But yes. I like to include a pita bread recipe in all of my cookbooks because, as you know, whether you're in Greece or Morocco or Egypt or Turkey or anywhere else in North Africa or the Mediterranean, you're always going to have wonderful pita bread to enjoy. And everybody's got their own unique pita too, so that's cool. I'm going to give it a little bit of drizzle of olive oil just to amp up the nutrients. Because as you know, Allison, when we add more olive oil, we get more nutrients out of the dishes. Then I'm going to hit it with some tahini sauce So this is sesame seed paste. It's made just from pressing sesame seeds. I like to tell newcomers, I know you know what it is, but maybe some people watching might not know. I like to tell people this is to sesame seeds what peanut butter is to peanuts. They just grind up the sesame seeds, and it's wonderful.
If you have kids in school, get a bottle of tahini because kids can't have peanut butter. So I use tahini actually as a sub in a lot of my energy balls and things like that for the kids to bring to school. So good tip to the audience out there. It's an extra use of tahini beyond just the culinary application. Is for an allergy-friendly item to bring to school, as long as there's no sesame restrictions.
Exactly. And you know, that's also very Mediterranean because instead of peanut butter and jelly in the Mediterranean, they have pita with tahini and grape molasses.
Yes, yes.
Dish.
Oh, how beautiful. I don't know if the dish or the plate itself is more beautiful. Amy.
Well, you know, I have Sicilian roots. These are called Palermo. So I pulled these out for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The pita. So you would just have a little bit of the pita, and then you could dip it into the ful. You could dip it into the labna. At the same time, I'll kind of get this down a little bit lower so you can see it. You could have some of the vegetables, and some dates and some almonds, oranges, lemons. The great thing is this is like just the beginning of the Eastern Mediterranean breakfast, because they would also have eggs and other types of, maybe some cooked eggplant and other types of yogurt, some other types of bread, and it just goes on and on and on. So, but it's wonderfully nutrient, and you can, if you come home busy at the end of a day of work, or you're in your Zoom meetings all day and you need a quick dinner. You saw how quick that was to make, but yet it's really nutritious.
How beautiful. And really, as you said at the beginning, it's any time of day. I mean, this is really the type of meal that I would crave breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I could see why in Egypt they're using it as breakfast, because you're right, it has all of these nutrients and it has this incredible staying power. So you really, it keeps you full. It keeps your blood sugar regulated at a level. And I know you said that's part of how you learned to cook, was to regulate blood sugar. So what a wonderful representation of that. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
So it was naturally and almost effortlessly plant forward and health forward. And that's what's so amazing about the Mediterranean, is that so many of these recipes speak to what we as nutrition educators, and I know you're a chef and so much more, but really you do so much nutrition education in what you do as well, Amy, which I appreciate, but in a way that your food just showcases those items. You almost don't need to even tell people that they need to eat that way, because it's right there in front of them.
Exactly. That's what I try to do. I was at Cooking DC on Sunday, and I had to do a demo, and I did this dish. And I know for a lot of people, their chefs are probably looking at me like, why would you make something so simple when you have the chance to be on stage? And, maybe why so healthy when you could have done like something a little bit more sweet. And the idea was just that people, we can get the sweets in a lot of places right now, and they're kind of easy access. It's harder to get this. And I'm all for, like, in the holiday season when people are making salads on wreaths and really presenting vegetables well, because we've gone away from that and we need it. And just like you said, the Mediterranean always has this built in, that people in ancient times, when they grew their crops, they had to make the most out of those crops, and that's what they were eating. And I always tell people they couldn't just slaughter an animal every day to have it every day and then plan their meal around whatever animal it was. That was for special occasions, weddings, holidays, but the majority of the meal was based on this. So all of those recipes were developed that way. And even now, if you're a chef in Italy or Spain or Greece or Turkey, it's a very different mentality than if you're a chef in the United States. Here, all of the chef menus, unless they're purposely plant forward nowadays to be trendy, usually start with a protein. They start with that and then they build the meal around it. But in the Mediterranean, the meals have always been done around whatever season it was. So eggplant season or zucchini season or bean season, or you name it. And number one, it's much more healthy for us. Number two, yes, it's much better for the environment.
Yes.
And number three, now it's in style, but it didn't have to be that way. So if we can get that way, we want to get hopefully these up to 12 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. We plan our menus that way. It's much easier. Then we can add in the protein instead of starting with the protein and then trying to think of what matches with that.
Yes, so you said it perfectly. It's better for us, better for the environment, and it's more affordable, right? If you're focusing on plants, we know that it's much more affordable to eat in that way. And I love that. because all heritage cuisine really does start with the vegetables that were in season at different times. And if you happen to be in a place where you had access to the sea, then you were able to eat fish. And if you had access to land animals, and maybe you can include some, but they were so, it was a much more scarce resource, as were packaged and processed foods were much more of a scarce resource. So, some of the benefits, I think, of modern days, we have things like canned beans and packaged spices to make this all a little bit easier, which is fantastic. But then we also have to contend with the fact that the availability of resources leans much towards, as you mentioned, animal proteins, packaged and processed foods. So if we could use these, what we have wisely, I think we would create dishes like what you've presented us today. And of course, which are in your cookbooks, most recently, the one published on October 26th, The Mediterranean Lifestyle for Dummies, that I just had a chance to glance over before we spoke. And it's really beautiful. It's much more than a cookbook, 30 recipes, but amazing lifestyle tips that seem like they should be intuitive, but really need to be spoken about and need to be part of this broader conversation. So I appreciate that you brought that into a simple and digestible, for lack of a better term, format, Amy.
Thank you so much, Allison. I really appreciate you saying that. And, before I go into those tips, one of the things that you touched upon was so important that also doesn't get talked a lot about in the Mediterranean diet space is price and cost and affordability, because everybody thinks there's this misconception out there in the media and the world and just on the street that it's expensive to eat healthfully. And maybe certain things are expensive if you're trying to eat an artichoke in the dead of January and you live in Idaho or something like that. But if you're eating in season and you're pairing that with greens and truly eating a plant-based thing based on what you've got, it can be very unaffordable. For example, I did a TV demo a few weeks ago. I fed 10 people what I prepared for that TV show, and it cost me $35. Now, I can't think of a fast food restaurant that you could go to that you can feed 35 people a complete balanced meal and have it cost $35. The same, what I just have in front of you today, costs $12 and it feeds 4 people, and it's very nutrient dense. And I wasn't even trying to save money. I was just, shopping for this morning.
Yes.
You can really save money if you do it right. But you've got to eat in season. And of course, that's better for our body because it's got the nutrients that our body craves. I know you can speak to that even better than me. We've got to have some good things in our pantry, like some wonderful grains and pasta and rices, barley, things like that we can add to these ingredients. We can do a couple cost-saving things like saving our bones or our leftover vegetable tops to make stock.
Definitely.
Spread it out, have some good quality olive oil, and you can eat really inexpensively. And so the book has these tips. It has things like that, but then it also has things that have nothing to do with food, like the importance of getting enough sunshine and fresh air. People don't think about it. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and here if you study the amount of sunny days that we have the same amount of sun as Barcelona, Spain does. But we don't call it sunny Washington. They call it Spain, and people don't think about getting out in the sun because we're scared of the sun and we're worried about everything and we're hiding out inside. But 30 minutes of fresh air a day is more powerful than any antipsychotic drug. I mean, that's been proven. Fresh air, 10 minutes of sunlight does our body so much good. And I have all of the research about that. Laughter, free and available to everybody. It's the number one medicine. Our bodies can't be stressed at a cellular level when we're laughing. So if you watch a comedy, talk with a friend that you think is funny, look at the funny side of life. And I give examples and checklists of all of these things that I've gotten from different places in the Mediterranean. The laughter I picked up in Egypt. The culture is so that people have such a good sense of humor, and they try to make light of like any situation and make jokes, and it really has a good impact on your health. So I feel that I've been fortunate to live and work in a lot of these places, and the more that I can share that can help people anywhere, the better off we'll all be.
Yes, and you're right, and I appreciate that your book tells that to us. Right, it's so much more than just the food is so important, and as a dietitian and somebody who grew up in a kitchen and has spent years cooking and preparing food for my family and others. And I appreciate and respect the importance of that, but the lifestyle really does complement it so well. So just getting outside for 30 minutes, you touched on so many great points. And I'd love it, Amy, if we could do a quick list to put on the MDR Instagram. We've done a few different tip lists throughout this program. It would be great to share some of those tips in reference to your newest book with the MDR. So we'll share that with everybody with Amy's acceptance of that. So wonderful. And just one more question before we part ways. This is sort of going in a different direction, but I really want your take on it because I know your broad experience through this. So the Mediterranean basin has 21 countries surrounding it. And we know that most of these countries, the culinary, the traditions, like many heritage diets, they've been influenced by each other. They've been influenced by countries outside of the Mediterranean basin, countries deeper into Africa, et cetera. So there's so many influences, and you mentioned a few of them, Amy. So when it comes to the Mediterranean, and it seems that we singularly focus on maybe one or two countries and those cuisines, and it feels very limited to a lot of people who don't naturally embrace all of those ingredients, who don't understand. Why do you think it is that the conversation stops there? Why aren't we broadening this conversation? And then the next question is, how can we help to do that, to make this more approachable, a more diverse conversation, really, at the end of the day?
Sure. Well, I think those are both great questions. And, the short answer is, not purposely, but a lot of the research that was originally Americans were obtaining was coming from themselves going to places in Italy and Greece and studying there. So in my ancestral homeland of Calabria, for example, they actually have a Mediterranean diet center and research because that's kind of where everything was found. And then Ansel Keys, of course, went into the Cilento, also in Italy, and developed his studies there. And that's when Americans really first started hearing about the Mediterranean diet, was from Ansel Keys. A lot of post-World War II doctors went to different Greek islands like Crete and started studying there, which of course are wonderful, and brought that information back. And so that's all great. And then all of a sudden it became an American psyche, Greece, Italy, Spain, which I'm very happy to promote any of these countries, and I love all of them. But I think it serves us all well, just like in Italy, when I go back there, when we talk about the Mediterranean in Italy, we're usually talking about the whole Mediterranean because the entire region is important for the economy, for the trade, for the cultures, the exchange. It has always been that. Always been that. It's to be from a Mediterranean country, your country is self-important and can only self-dependent isn't really proper. So we have to include everybody because the Mediterranean is kind of a microcosm of the whole world. We look at it more. So that's one cultural perspective. And then what happened when I first started in this space and teaching and writing and participating in events like this, in the beginning, a lot of other Mediterranean diet associations, not the Diet Roundtable, other ones would specifically say, we don't want you to talk about Africa, or books. I find books every day that say, the Mediterranean diet is here, but even though these countries are in the Mediterranean, like Morocco and Egypt, they don't adhere to these things. And I'm thinking to myself, who says who? And how much time has the writer of that really spent in these countries? I study Arabic. I've been studying it for a long time. I speak conversational Arabic, and I've lived and worked in a lot of different places. I moved first to Morocco, Egypt, Arabic, but also Middle Eastern. And people don't think about the Mediterranean lifestyle in those countries, but there are every bit as many, if not more, lifestyle and diet tips that are taking place there every day. If you're a traveler and you're a tourist and you go to a hotel and you're catering to Americans and there's fast food restaurants in big cities, you can't say that a country as a nation doesn't adhere to Mediterranean lifestyle because that's what you see as a tourist. If you go and you work with the people, I learned, for example, in Morocco, the families at home are still making their starters from sourdough, natural leaveners. They're making their bread still from barley, just as they did in Rome. And that's very nutritious, very helpful. The idea of going home at lunch and taking siestas and things like this are all happening throughout the Mediterranean. So the more we embrace of the other cultures, also the better we'll be, because it opens up our palate and we see that you don't have to have just one cuisine. Or you don't have to take these 5 Mediterranean ingredients and add them to your American diet and call it Mediterranean.
Right. That's such a good point. You don't just want to take 5 Mediterranean ingredients, add them to your American diet. What a great point.
Right. So there's a lot to learn from the cultural perspective, from the food perspective, and from the the exchange of humans. Like I said, the whole concept of laughter. It's not that there aren't humorous people in other places, but it never really hit home to me until I was living in Egypt because it's so pronounced there. And so it's the more we can learn about all of these different places, the better it will be.
Yes, and how wonderful, and what a great way to end this conversation on that note, on a note of laughter, on a note of learning, on a note of embracing cultures and really accepting the diversity of this conversation and broadening the conversation. And that point once more, I really appreciate it, that we're not just taking a diet that we have and adding a couple of ingredients and calling it a Mediterranean lifestyle. We're really embracing this rich culture, this rich heritage. The different countries that have influenced one another throughout this conversation and throughout the years. And it shows how much we have to learn and how well of a job people like yourself, Amy, the MDR, Danielle, done in bringing this conversation to the forefront. So I'm grateful to have this time with you. And I only wish that we could have been together in person, because now I'm very hungry.
Wonderful. We have a suspended meal that we did out there. One day it will happen.
Wonderful, Amy. Thank you again. Be well.
Listen, have a great day. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.